black screen, slow heartbeat sound. Then, distant sirens fade in. Cut to early morning light over cities in the Middle East. This is not just a story about two nations. This is a story about fear, about memory, about history that refuses to sleep. In the heart of the Middle East, where ancient civilizations once built poetry, philosophy, and science, today, tension hangs in the air like unspoken words. On one side stands Iran, a nation of nearly 90 million people with a civilization stretching back thousands of years, a land of poets like Rumi, of scholars, of bustling bazaars and modern cities. On the other side stands Israel, a country born in the shadow of tragedy, shaped by survival, innovation, and constant security concerns. A land of diverse communities, ancient religious history, and cutting-edge technology. Two countries, two identities, two narratives, shaped by history and pain. But before we talk about missiles, before we talk about nuclear programs, before we talk about alliances and sanctions, we must ask a quieter question. What does conflict feel like? Not in headlines, but in homes. In Tehran, a mother wakes her son for school. She checks her phone, not for gossip, not for entertainment, but for news. Because in uncertain times, information feels like safety. In Tel Aviv, a father listens carefully as his daughter laughs at the breakfast table. He smiles, but somewhere in his mind, there is always a silent calculation. If a siren sounds, where is the nearest shelter? This is the invisible weight of prolonged tension. It does not always explode. Sometimes it simply lingers. For decades, the relationship between Iran and Israel has been marked not by open, total war, but by suspicion, rhetoric, covert operations, cyber incidents, and regional rivalry. And yet, despite the political hostility, there is a strange reality. Ordinary people in both countries often know very little about each other. They do not wake up hating. They wake up working. They worry about rent, about exams, about inflation, about healthcare, about their parents growing older. But geopolitics does not ask ordinary people for permission. It moves above them. The tension did not appear overnight. It was built piece by piece through historical events, ideological shifts, regional struggles. There were speeches that hardened positions, policies that deepened mistrust, moments when diplomacy almost worked, and moments when it collapsed. In global politics, perception can be as powerful as reality. When leaders speak of threats, populations listen. When military drills are shown on television, fear travels faster than facts. But here is something often forgotten. Fear is rarely symmetrical. In Israel, many see Iran's military ambitions as an existential danger. In Iran, many see Israel as part of a hostile regional order aligned against them. Each side views itself as defensive. Each side sees the other as aggressive. And somewhere in between, narratives solidify. Media amplifies tension. Social media accelerates it. Rumors sometimes travel faster than verification. And yet, even in this atmosphere, something remarkable exists. There are academics who quietly study each other's societies. There are activists who speak of peace, often at personal risk. There are diaspora communities who share friendships beyond borders. Conflict dominates the headlines, but coexistence survives in whispers. This documentary does not aim to declare a winner. It does not seek to assign collective blame. Instead, it asks, how did we arrive here? What choices shaped this reality? And most importantly, what choices still remain? The story of Iran and Israel is not just about two flags. It is about revolution and survival, about ideology and identity, about security and sovereignty, about alliances and isolation. But at its core, it is about something deeply human, the desire to feel safe. Security is a powerful motivator. It can build alliances. It can justify defense systems. It can also justify suspicion. And when two nations both believe their survival is at stake, compromise becomes harder. In the coming chapters, we will travel through history, from shifting alliances before 1979 to the transformation brought by revolution, to the nuclear negotiations that raised hope, to the proxy conflicts that intensified rivalry. We will examine policies, but we will return again and again to people. Because wars may be planned in rooms with polished tables, but their consequences are felt in kitchens, classrooms, hospital corridors. Tonight in Tehran, families gather for dinner. Tonight in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, families do the same. They bless food, they share stories, they plan tomorrow. And tomorrow, like every tomorrow in regions of tension, carries both routine and uncertainty. This is where our journey begins, not with explosions, but with silence, not with blame, but with questions. And perhaps if we listen carefully enough, within the noise of politics, we may still hear something fragile: hope. Archival footage, black and white photographs, Tehran in the 1960s, Tel Aviv in the 1970s, diplomats shaking hands, oil facilities, military cooperation. History is rarely simple. Before Iran and Israel became sworn adversaries, they were not enemies at all. In fact, for decades after Israel's establishment in 1948, Iran, under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, maintained quiet but significant ties with Israel. There were no public celebrations of friendship, but there was cooperation. Oil flowed, intelligence was shared, trade existed behind the scenes. Both nations found themselves in a region dominated by Arab nationalism at the time. Both felt strategically isolated. Both saw value in discrete alignment. In geopolitics, alliances are often built not on affection, but on shared concerns. And for a time, those concerns overlapped. Iran in the 1960s and 70s was undergoing rapid modernization. The Shah pursued Western partnerships, economic expansion, military strengthening. But beneath the surface, discontent was growing. Economic inequality, political repression, cultural tension between tradition and westernization. And in 1979, everything changed. The Iranian Revolution reshaped not only Iran's government, but its identity. Led by Ruhollah Khomeini, the revolution replaced monarchy with an Islamic republic. Foreign policy shifted dramatically. Israel was no longer a quiet partner. It was now described by the new leadership as illegitimate. Diplomatic ties were cut. The Israeli embassy in Tehran was handed to representatives of the Palestinian cause. What had once been silent cooperation turned into open hostility. But revolutions do more than change leadership. They redefine narratives. The new Iranian government framed its opposition to Israel as part of a broader ideological and regional struggle, connected to Palestinian statehood, anti-Western sentiment, resistance politics. Meanwhile, in Israel, the revolution triggered alarm. A former partner had transformed into a vocal adversary. And in a region already defined by conflict, uncertainty is dangerous. Fear began to replace familiarity. The 1980s were turbulent across the Middle East. The Iran-Iraq War consumed Iran for 8 devastating years. Israel, meanwhile, navigated its own regional conflicts and security challenges. Interestingly, history holds complexities that do not fit simple narratives. During the Iran-Iraq War, there were indirect interactions involving arms transfers connected to what later became known as the Iran-Contra affair, involving the United States. Geopolitics often contains contradictions. Public hostility can coexist with covert maneuvering. But despite occasional indirect dealings, distrust deepened. Through the 1990s and early 2000s, rhetoric intensified. Iran expanded its regional influence through alliances with non-state actors. Israel increasingly viewed Iran not just as a hostile government, but as the central strategic threat in the region. The language on both sides hardened. Statements became sharper. Military planning became more focused. Intelligence efforts increased. And with every speech, every warning, every counter-warning, public perception evolved. In Israel, Iran's developing nuclear capabilities raised existential fears. In Iran, Israeli military strength and Western alliances were framed as aggressive containment. Each side believed it was acting defensively. This is one of the tragedies of prolonged rivalry. When both sides believe they are preventing destruction, compromise feels like surrender. Experts often describe this relationship as a shadow conflict, not a conventional war, but not peace either. Cyber operations, targeted strikes in Syria, covert sabotage allegations, diplomatic pressure, actions that rarely escalate into full war, but never allow true stability. And yet, something important must be said clearly. The governments are not the same as the people. In Iran, millions of young citizens grow up connected to global culture, technology, art, debate. In Israel, a diverse society, Jewish, Arab, secular, religious, navigates internal political differences and social debates. Neither population is monolithic. Neither thinks with one voice. But when tension dominates official discourse, nuance disappears. It becomes easier to speak in absolutes, easier to say always, easier to say never, harder to say perhaps. Imagine being born after 1979 in Iran. You grow up hearing about Israel only as an adversary. Imagine being born in Israel in the 1990s. You grow up hearing about Iran primarily as a strategic threat. Narratives shape perception long before personal experience does. And when generations inherit mistrust, it compounds. But history also shows something else. Rivalries are not permanent. France and Germany were once locked in catastrophic wars. The United States and Japan were once bitter enemies. Time, leadership, political courage can reshape destinies. The question is not whether hostility exists. It clearly does. The question is whether hostility is inevitable. As we move forward in this documentary, we will explore the nuclear issue, the moment when global diplomacy attempted to reduce tensions. For a brief period, the world believed de-escalation was possible. Agreements were signed, inspections were arranged, sanctions relief was negotiated. Hope entered the conversation. But hope in geopolitics is fragile, and when agreements unravel, mistrust often returns, stronger than before. Night falls over Tehran. Night falls over Jerusalem. In both cities, lights remain on in government buildings. Analysts study reports. Military officials examine data. Diplomats draft statements, carefully worded. Above it all, ordinary citizens sleep, hoping that tomorrow will be quieter than yesterday. History brought these two nations from cooperation to confrontation. But history is not finished. It is still being written. And what is written next will depend not only on power, but on choices.